Welcome everyone to this first installation of our four parts Making Move series. In a few seconds, we'll be speaking about a topic that is very dear to me, but let's wait a little bit for more to join us. While we're waiting, feel free to add any comments or any question here in the comment section, and we will make sure to go over it at the end of the event. And maybe you can start by telling us where are you watching us from and what are you hoping to get out of this session. It will be great, and we definitely will have some time for it to discuss at the end of this session. All right, let's make some moves. Branding, arguably one of the most important activities that business must do in order to survive. It's a process that can help equip businesses with all what they need to flourish and achieve their purpose and vision. When it's done right, it helps you take control of your target audience perception about your product, service, or your personal brand, and then position you into where you belong. The truth is, there are many ways to create a brand, and it can be done in different ways at different stages of the business life cycle. It actually can be done, redone, and redone all over again. And today we are here to unveil some of these processes, some of these tactics and tips on how to create a brand. We will be exploring few of the many questions that how to build a brand, how to build a brand with an impact, how to build an inclusive branding, the role of technology in the process, and many more. And to ensure we have solid answers, we had to get one of the best brand creator here in Melbourne. The man who has been involved in building brands such Telstra, Crown, AFL, Cricket Australia, Tennis Australia, and much more. Richard Henderson. Welcome to our Making Moves live event, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Mo, and welcome to everyone.
Perfect. Richard, to start, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about yourself, your journey, I'm sure there's lots of things we can unpack from there.
Thanks, Mo. Well, look, I'm just, before we get into this, I'm expecting you to be the orchestra, the conductor of this interview, just to stop me going off track. Okay, because
no worries. I can do that for sure.
I'm passionate about this is basically my life and my work, and it's my purpose on this earth. So, but first off, I think it's important that I acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we are gathered today and pay my respects to their elders past and present, because in the background here I have an Aboriginal artwork which is dear to me, not only because of its intensity, but because it's in blue. Also there, if you can see, a small sculpture of David, created by Michelangelo in the 16th century in 1501. And then I've also got there, which is on my desk here, the phrenology sculpture, which is about the mind. And I just sort of like to, you asked a bit about myself, Mo, is I see this as a connection between heritage and the past and memory, and in a way making marks, which is what we do nowadays in brand, which comes from the origin of the cave painting, etc. And of course, the Indigenous community here in Australia is 65,000 years old heritage. Then we've got Michelangelo, and the fantastic thing I love about Michelangelo as a sculptor is that he with intuition saw the figure within the marble block. And that's sort of what we do as brand guys and Imagineers and creatives. We see the unseen, and it's a gift. And it's something that we don't recognize the value of, but it's a very, very important aspect of community, of growth, and the imagination of what it makes us different from the other species, that we're the only species that has imagination. And the designer and the creator can see, as I said, what others can't see. And of course, the head there, the mind, is where imagination lives. It doesn't live in the brain, it lives in the mind, which is outside the two vortexes of the left and right brains. It connects the brain with the heart. And that's a very important point. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this as part of my philosophy of life. And I extend that into the idea of the sacred geometry. And so I bring a lot of passion into what we do as a design business, me as a designer. And someone said to me that I'm basically a structural creative. I need the structure to be able to develop the image. And of course, reminding ourselves that we're in the business of design. We're not in the design business. We're not artists, but we use art. We're not strategists, but we use strategy. So we're thinking creatives, and that's a little bit of my background. I've been very fortunate. I sit here talking to you, Mo. I don't often. Never been offered really the opportunity to speak on webinars like this, so I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mo. But I also stand here on the shoulders of giants. Everything that you might see of my work or seen the work that I've been associated with has been created by our teams and by other people. I've done it for 30 years, and it's here to be able to represent not only them, my dear colleagues and respected colleagues, but also for the design community, to sort of show how important design and creativity and imagination is to the further betterment of not only our communities and our people, our nation, but also the earth and the planet, and how we move forward. So that's a deep passion for me, but it also comes with respect for those that I've worked with who really create the work that you see connected with ARCO.
Perfect. I appreciate all of this, Richard. I just wanted to let everyone here know as well. Last year, we had a pleasure in collaborating, you and me, on one project, Atlas to Blue, and I believe this was the starting of our relationship. Working with you really showed us lots of insight on how things can be done better. Lots of your vision, the passion you put into the work were really, for me personally and for the team, we looked at it as this is what we aspire to be. This is the kind of talent, expertise, and knowledge and love that we should be putting into our project. So I enjoyed working with you in that project. It taught us a lot of things, and hence we are here today. I thought I learned a few things, so let's bring you in here and put you in front of everyone here. So hopefully more people will learn one or two things from today. So I think we should start making our first move and speak about what make a brand distinctive. We know as in today's landscape, B2B businesses are increasingly recognizing the importance of being socially responsible, including things to or care about things that their customers care about. So, from your point of view, Richard, how can a brand use its extensive approach to make an impact or to share more about the impact messages that they have that their customers will be associated with?
Okay, thank you, Mo. And I do appreciate that people want to hear some of the persona, but they actually sort of want to try and get some facts and figures of how does a company like us work, and what is the inside story. I mean, first of all, with any brand, you've got to look at the business plan. The brand plan comes off the business plan, and the business plan is the direction of the business and where the business wants to go. And in that, you've got to have the structure of that. So we've got to understand the purpose of the business. What drives it? What is the seed of the idea? What is the passion? Why would you go and work with someone, or why would you buy something from a particular business? You've got to understand that. That takes some time of just unpacking that and unfolding it. Then you've got to identify in a strategic process of the uniqueness. Now, what are the unique things? What is it that this organisation does that no one else does, or what does it do that's better? Okay, so these are straightforward. This is not a science, but it is a science in one way, but it's about a really understanding of the core purposes of why do you exist. Then you've got to sort of see the values. Now, the values can be are very important, because those values are which an organisation hangs its hat upon, and it drives the business. It drives how it responds to its people and its marketplace. And let's ever forget here that it's the inside story that's so critical. The beliefs are even more critical nowadays in the digital world, where we're not. Many companies don't have the opportunity of the water cooler talk, or up and coming down the lift or seeing each other or commenting on things such as dress code or what do you do on the weekend, the chit chat. It's been reduced into a digital space now, and that's incredibly important that the values are clear and expressed. And the next thing is authenticity. Now, I do want to touch base on authenticity because authenticity is the driver of everything nowadays. And if you aren't authentic, it's very easy to be found out. And there's so much superficiality out there. There's so much noise to be able to be authentic. And the problem a lot that we have today is that the authenticity is sort of muted into much more of a herd mentality. I think being authentic is being your own person, being your own company, being your own set of values, not being in the herd. If you're in the herd and you're inside that herd, it's not a great look. You can't see outside the herd. So you have to look at yourself and then get to the edge where you're going forward. Don't get caught up in the herd. That's a very important point, I think, personally and professionally in a business sense. Then there's understanding the customer. I mean, what I think brands need to do is always understand what is the customer thinking to then actually be able to talk to the customer and get into their mind. Now, you could look at this in a jaundiced way. You could say, oh, this is mind manipulation or something like that. But the customer's not stupid. They can work out where it's at, but they will identify if you're doing the touch points that appeal to their anxiousness or their desire. That's a very important point. Then
Sure.
you've got to get a relevance. You've got to get a compelling story. You've got to have great content. You've got to have clarity. You've got to have truth. Again, truth is lost with the noise of the system that's actually controlling our whole lives, the big overarching system. Truth is very, very hard to find nowadays. Then it's always great with a brand to have testimonials supported by people that says, this is why blogs and things are very, very critical nowadays in getting a credential and getting those fine points of that someone else outside is endorsing the brand. And then, of course, importantly, in the global picture, all these have to be aligned across all the touch points. And finally, every brand nowadays must pay attention to sustainability, about looking after each other, looking after community, and looking after the planet.
Perfect. It's a great reminder and run through of potentially some of the key aspects in the process of building a distinct brand and building a brand strategy around it. So, as you mentioned, started with the vision, the purpose, having a clear purpose that you use it to build everything that support it and equip it with all what's needed for you to achieve that purpose. You touch point on the values, which is something we also hold very dear. And when we work with clients, we try to identify that real values that reflect their business and they can use it and associate their business and build their culture around it. Now, if we want to tie this strategy or process to building this brand, a distinct brand itself, how do you see incorporating an impact messages or impact messaging into the branding process itself? What area that should be tied in with the impact? How can they identify an impact that reflect or tie in or make sense to their customers, that support their vision? As you said, potentially one of the key impact that everyone should look at is sustainability. But how can we incorporate impact messages as part of the DNA of the brand itself, like from the get-go, basically, when you are defining all this information?
Okay, good question, Mo. I mean, impact, you think about impact, you think about it big letters or bang or big exclamation mark, right? That's not impact. That might be immediate C, but impact is the long-term relationship that you get with the customer or with a brand, with a message. That takes sensitivity. And impact also can be done by originality and imagination. There's so much stuff out there that's just so incredibly boring. They have to make it louder, noisier, etc. to get there, but they don't actually think about how could they really tune into the customer. Now, this is a psychology. And that when we talk about this too, please, everyone here on the show, remember this is not mind manipulation. This is just actually sort of creating a situation where a customer can decide whether they want to have something or not. But if they do want to have something, they build a relationship. So imagination, keywords, language, creativity, that's impact. So you stop, pause, and then what we would sort of like to do is say, pause, consider, be inspired, and then motivate. Now, and at the end of the day too, we are in business. So, the success of a brand or the success of creativity in my world is commercial success. It's not just creative or it appears it's good design. It's actually about what does that contribute to the company that's employing us to do this, and how can we, as the third wheel, as the company and the audience has the third wheel, what can we add value to that's not transitory, that actually takes everyone to a different dimension. But and I think also, of course, across the touch points, digital, for example, has now become so important for impact. And you've got to impact, again, as I mentioned before, I like this analogy of being in the herd. If you're in the herd, you aren't going to get impact. You just get a lot of noise and a lot of rustling and not a good look. To get your head outside the herd, you can actually create some new space, which in most cases is attractive.
Perfect. So if I will rephrase this basically, or say it in a different way, so if we incorporate impact as part of the core message of the brand and communicate it through the different touch point, through digital the touch point, through the messaging in the brand, we can build an emotional connection with an audience, basically improve loyalty, and as a result help drive commerce, help drives growth of the business itself, which is eventually, as you mentioned at the end, this is the final output of the client itself. Is it correct?
Yeah, well, look, this is why when I talk with you, I'm immersed now in the subject, and I'm immersed with how I feel about what we're talking about, and I'm immersed in how can I structure what I'm feeling into a relevant conversation that people can pick up, write notes or whatever. And by the way, if anyone wanted anything from me on this stuff, I'm very happy to share it, because the more I give out, the more I can put back into my brain. But so this idea of, which is why this is my office. This is what I work with every day, right? This painting, this emotional connection with this painting, this piece of art, and then the thinking, as I said before, the reasons why those pieces are there, is that emotional loyalty is far more meaningful in today for business and for the consumer and for our own lives. We're so frightened about our emotions, for example, I could ask you, well, what do you think of that color blue? Some people might not even be able to actually articulate what they think about it. Okay, but when you start analysing it in a structural way, you can start pulling these things apart, and then you can put them together in a combination with word, image, sound, and obviously the digital transfer. The access to brand nowadays is so critical. The emotional experience you're having with a brand, both online and offline, you then get this remarkable composition of something which has an emotional appeal, that appeals to the senses. We are, our whole body is essential instrument. So how we touch things, feel things, smell things, see it, hear it, it all influences us. And nowadays, people are over the noise. For example, just a current trend, we're going to talk about trends later, but for example, on LinkedIn, which obviously most people are on LinkedIn, otherwise we wouldn't be on this session.
Yes.
Authenticity and clarity of message, and something that's actually creates a conversation, is going to be the determinator of where you rank on LinkedIn. It's not whether you just like it or some sort of family stuff that you put on. It's actually, have you got a message that someone will resonate with something? Then you get the comment back. You will get elevated because of that. That's where it's going.
100%. So with LinkedIn, it's
sorry.
No, I was thinking with LinkedIn is where you can tie in some of those messages and start building a personal brand that support the bigger brand itself. Now, I want to keep moving in and continuing the same topic, but just remind everyone, if you have a question about impact, about business, please add it in the comment and we'll get to it later. Now, if we reframe and this conversation, if we want to put it in perspective to B2B businesses, how the branding process can be different, Richard, from your experience, what kind of method or relationship you developed first with those businesses who are targeting other businesses? How do you do it differently from B2C when you come to create this process? Because it's potentially can be different approach to it. I'm not sure if you have any input on this.
Well, I would basically say that B2B is, we're still talking about customers, we're still talking about people, we're still talking about personality, we're still talking about points of difference. So look, I don't really have a set answer to what you just said, Mo, because I think that the way businesses talk to each other really has to come out, or the way they want to talk to each other really has to come out of that exploration process. But we would use the same exploration, or what we call a context map, which I'm happy to share with you, for B2B or B2C. It's just that when you get to B2C, you're talking about perhaps a lot more diverse set of audiences. Okay, they have a range of audiences, which in a B2C also would cover some corporate work as well. So you're probably limited. You have an advantage in that you're limited to the number of audiences you've got to talk to. So therefore, your volume control, we'd say volume control on a brand to talking to the audience, would not be so varied as it would be B2C. But the principles are still exactly the same. And the principles, you can't tell me that a company to company isn't still talking with some sort of emotional values, because companies are made up of people. So far, that's before the robots come in.
So far, exactly. But you're right, definitely. At the end, you're reaching out to specific people that we need to define their persona in terms of either the persona here. It's about business, potentially different channels. They use different mindset they have at that time, but in a similar process to how we go after a B2C, which is developing their persona, finding their pain point, just in a different context or a different environment, channels, etc. So from my end, I believe the extent to this can really be reflected more into once the brand inventory, the strategy is very clear. The reflection on this become more into the different tactics of how to apply this brand itself, what the choices of choices of content pillars or brand pillars. Basically, you can talk about just to be a reflection. But definitely in agreement with you here. Process eventually can be very similar, just the different output, the end, or the different choices pool that we'll be choosing from in terms of channels, pillars, etc., can be a little bit different. I want to ask you something. I don't think it's really part of our plan or agenda. I just want to include. It's something I thought of at the moment, which is about inclusive branding. How can we, when you create a brand from the start, from scratch, this blank canvas, and you're just really working with a vision and a purpose, is this the right time to speak about inclusivity and ensuring your brand reflect this different diverse audience?
Yeah, okay, Mo. That wasn't on this number one 5-point sheet that you gave me, Mo. But anyway,
Yes.
I'll tackle that one. Look, I think the outcome of what you want is really, we shouldn't start with that. We should start with, well, what are you here for? What have you got to offer? What is your purpose? And then as you go through this process, one of the great things about the process of branding is it's inclusive, so that when you share the brand, particularly internally, and this is a time also of vulnerability, because you have to open up and be prepared to have the good, the bad, and the ugly, and also to express an uncertainty. And as you go through this, you'll find where the objectives are. So our process to get to that point that you're talking about, and I've got a little sheet here, so I'll just read them out. This is to help answer your question. I might not be answering directly, but it's probably the best way I can. Is that, first of all, you have to understand the purpose. You have to understand what's the problem that you solve. Who are you going to assist and serve? What are the competitors? And why are you different? And where are you vulnerable? And what's the story? Where does the vision want to take you, and how you're going to get there? Okay, so at the end of the day, it's really about understanding, this whole idea of what complex problem do you solve. Now that doesn't mean if you're talking to B2C or B2B. And in that process, this is why these things are, so fascinating to work with companies that are trying to discover that and work that through. And it's a process. And as I said to the start to you, I think might have been offline. If someone was wanting to understand strategies for brand, there's probably 20,000 books on Amazon on how to do brand strategy. You pick the one you want. There's so many triangle Venn diagrams. But I tell you what, there aren't too many books written that tell you how do you bring imagination and creativity in aligning brand strategy with an emotional connection with your customers or your people. That's what I do though. That's what we do at Arco. We connect that emotional connection with structure, strategy, and where a brand through the emotional senses can touch the consumer. Whether you're a B2B, whether you're a multinational corporation, multinational corporations have got thousands and maybe some cases hundreds of thousands of people. They've still got to talk to those people also the consumer, the businesses and the other businesses to people. It's not, we're not talking to bricks.
Perfect. Yes, I mean, with the processes and what you do at Arco as well, it's evident the outcome, brilliant work. So, and so the focus on the imagination, the focus on achieving and finding those way to differentiate the business is definitely, it's a topic that obviously we can talk a lot about it. If you don't mind, I actually want to move to, excuse me, Richard. So I want to move to something that we spoke about branding process, but I'm on the assumption that majority of the people here coming from businesses who already have some form of a brand created. We check the audience we had, and majority of them, they're coming from existing businesses, so they somehow have a brand. So, and hopefully on the assumption that they went through this process at the start and they develop something great. But potentially a question that can be on their mind is, when is the good time to rebrand? At what stage the brand that has been created potentially reach its full potential and it doesn't give you much more, or maybe it's a smart way for you to change it now, to rebrand it, recreate it, etc. So I'm sure you've done lots of rebrands as well in your amazing journey. So if you just give us a simple answer about when is a good time to create a rebrand.
Don't ever ask me to give you a simple answer, Mo. It's not possible for me.
I'm trying to frame it to keep it simple, but still at the end, we'd love to hear what you have, Richard.
I have a chaotic mind, and I try and go through a filter of structure to get it out. So, I have that. I have got 10 points on that. So you'll be relieved to know. So, look, first off, let me say this. I'm incredibly humbled by any time you have an opportunity to talk to someone about their brand. Yeah, and when we talk about their brand, it's not the logo. The brand is all the things that go with, that is symbolized by the logo. The logo is the lighthouse which illuminates. It either illuminates with a dull beam, or it doesn't illuminate at all, or it's all encompassing. Okay, so that's the first thing to say. So the brand is not the logo. We often come to stories where a logo has been developed or story has been developed and people don't even know what it means, or someone said they got a designer to do it and it's lost. It doesn't resonate. So look, there are really 10 key points, and also may I also say to everyone, I'm talking about when we do brands for a small cafe or a large manufacturing. Also, it's not, this whole process of discussion is not sort of relevant to just big brands. People always think, oh, Arco, big brands. We do small things, under $10,000. Like it's not always big. Okay, so first off, the first thing that will happen is for brand is mergers or acquisitions. So that's about culture. You're going to bring two cultures together. You bring new people in, or whatever. You're changing your whole dimension. That's a merger and acquisition. That's one. Second one is changing markets. So, for example, if this has to be a restructure because the market's changing and your product range is going to change to suit those markets, that might mean that your existing brand, could be the name, could be the identity, could be the way you express yourself, needs to be reviewed. Okay. Then there's the idea of, third one is repositioning. So if you've got a really new promise, you want to evolve into something different. You want to, you want to take your existing current reputation and you want to reposition because your business plan. This is all about business plan. It's not about brand, business plan. That it asks you to change your brand because it's very hard to say you're moving to somewhere else if you don't actually show physically you are moving to someone else.
Yes.
You can't have the same. You want to be a sporty spice. You can't be in a suit in a three-piece suit, right? You have to actually change. Okay. So the fourth one is a changing of your brand portfolio. So in other words, you might acquire a whole lot of different businesses, and your portfolio enlarges. Therefore, what you're known for now needs to be expressed in a different way. The fifth one is being global. You suddenly want to have a bit more of a global impression. You want to look rather than local. You want to have a bigger perception. A lot of times, you want to have a big look, but you might only have 4 people, but you want to look like the 40 people. So you need to expand up. You're no longer in the burbs. The other thing is it's beyond just the logo. You really are starting to have an integrated portfolio, as mentioned before. The other thing too is could be your reputation. Maybe it's been damaged. Maybe something's happened that means that you've got to sort of regroup, reorganize, restructure. Something's gone wrong with the business. It needs to be reinvented and repositioned. A new CEO, a new management team can make a big difference to an organization. Where does that CEO want to take a company? There are many examples of which we've worked through where a new CEO or new marketing directors come in and it just needs, that person has a mission, has got a contract, it has some set of objectives, KPIs. That means the business has to change because those KPIs can't be achieved without that for that CEO who's basically engaged to deliver that. There's also the ninth one is a conflict, the stakeholder conflict. People aren't happy with the way the brand's going. It's got to protect its messages. And finally, which is probably the one thing that you start off with, is it could be seen to be outdated. So it just needs to be relooked at. But all these things are not just taken by lightly. They have to be thought through because brand change, of course, as well, not only just working with a consultant, etc., then everything else has to change. Signage, collateral, websites, digital.
It's definitely an expensive exercise. I love that you had those 10 points, Richard. It's a brilliant answer. Amazing. Because I think the insights you shared here are really key to everyone listening with us today. Like those potentially are the signs that if it's happening, potentially it's time to consider a rebrand. Sometimes the answer doesn't have to be yes, but potentially it's something you want to examine, you want to consider. I'll try to repeat them again in a quick go. If you're merging an acquisition, it can be a perfect time to rebrand. You will have 2 brands. How to combine them? Maybe you'll drop one of them and keep the stronger one. Maybe we'll come up with something completely new, etc. If you're changing the market or repositioning to something different, if you have a reputation damage, if you have a new management, as I said, a new CMO always want a change. And this is one somehow. It's a way to realign the mission or update the mission itself. If there's conflict, if it's dated. I also think of it maybe if you're growing beyond the existing vision or the place that you found yourself or you thought you're going to be in. This could potentially can also be another sign for you to rebrand. And I will add just one. If you're changing your name, this one kind of make I believe it's usually can be a common sense one. But if you're changing a name, this can also trigger the potential need to have a rebrand. So this was brilliant 10 points, Richard. Really appreciate it. I learned one or two also new one for me. So it's great conversation for anyone listening. This is if you start seeing those things happening in your business, potentially it's a great time to consider rebrand. But now I want to move to a different angle, and I want to invite Uyun from our team. She's from our Melbourne office to join us and speak to us about some of the branding trends in 2023 and 2024. So, Oyen, if you are here, kindly join us. Here
Alrighty,
you are.
guys. Coming to you from the MoWorks office, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is branding trends. And this is purely visual, guys, but in the past 5 years, you've probably seen a lot of brands going minimalistic. So ridding themselves of their intricate logos or going completely sans serif on their font. So in fashion, we've seen Balenciaga, Burberry, Saint Laurent, and in tech, I don't know if you've noticed, but Google, Facebook, Spotify, Airbnb, among many others, have also gone the minimalistic route. Um, but this year we're hearing a lot of talk about bolder, brighter, more eye-catching colors that steps away from the minimalistic beige and whites and blank spaces. Brands are trying to evoke more emotional reactions. They're doing more with less, which is sort of using fewer elements but maximizing their expressions. So, yeah, enough for my segue. We'll take it to you, Richard, to give us your take on branding trends of 2023 and 2024.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. And I love that little segue, and I don't agree with most of it, but anyway.
Well, exactly. This is what we want to hear from you. What's your
Well,
opinion
first
about
of
the
all,
coming trends?
let me go back to the idea of the herd. I mean, they're just a herd, right? They're just all the same. What particular type font? I mean, Burberry's, thank God, has gone out of that and gone back to its heraldic image point of difference, because that's a relationship, a personal relationship. But it also, but on the one hand, going into that central thing, the herd thing, I talked about being in the noise with everyone else, is that you have to be imaginative in the way that you represent that message, because that's just, it's probably indicative of the fact that the identity is only just one part of the experience you're going to have with a brand. I mean, fashion brands are also pretty hard to sort of do a lot of comment on, because their logos, because they're basically, their relationship is with the product. But then the reassurance that the heritage of the brand means that you're that type of customer, or you appeal to those sort of values. But certainly, I would go back and support what Ewan has just said, that it is about how are you going to take, if everything becomes the same, how can you be different? And you can only be different with imagination and creativity. I do want to show you something. It's a little thing I want to just, which I think everyone would appreciate. There's a philosopher and author called Robert Fritz. You can see him on, Google him and you'll see his thing. He talks about the tension, which just gets back to the creativity, back to purpose, back to business, back to how do you have something which is compelling. He talks about the idea. He uses an elastic band like this, right? He talks about the today, or what is now, or the existing, the status quo of what everyone thinks is here on my left hand. And he talks about the tension of trying to move out into a new area, into something new. And he talks about this idea of as the tension that always pulling you back. When you're trying to talk to someone in a meeting, you're trying to convey something, you're trying to move out, you can't get consensus on that, particularly from a business point of view. But if you put structure in an idea and almost a stairway, or bring something that can actually break that tension, that's the structure. But then if you actually then add imagination and creativity to it, you can basically break that, and it can actually move forward, because the mind now gets another opportunity to see something else. And I think that's the really, really critical art here of business structure, thinking, strategy as to reasons why, and then an imagination idea that breaks through the clutter, and you are able to move forward. Because once someone visualizes a future, there's a comfort zone. So you bridge the gap. We go to next. Now, this is fundamental brand thinking and brand creativity. As I said, you can read all sorts of books about strategies and reasons why, and business plans and stuff. You can't, this little thing that I just showed you then is the key, bridging the gap, going to next. And then, of course, we all know ourselves in every other part of life. You go into a room, or you have a comment, or you meet someone, and someone says something to you. You go to a show. A lot of people say you go to meetings and stuff. You come up with one idea after a 2-hour session. It can change your life. So I've had many instances where someone will come into the area where we'll have our team around. We'll show them something. Their mind is shifted from the moment they walked in to the moment they walk out, they're not the same again. And the reason why they're not the same again is structure, thinking, strategy. A stairway has been created. And if they're brave enough to take the stairway, because they have to take the stairway because they paid for the stairway. So they walk up the stairway, they go to the door where the thing open up, a whole new world is open to them. And that's creativity. That is the power. And that then is then
I love that. I love that, Richard. And I like your comment about they paid for the stairway. They want to see the process because this is how it's part of their buy-in in the new direction you'll be taking them on. This.
Cut over the top
Yes.
of you there, Mo. Sorry, but I've got to talk to the design profession, the creative profession. I'm not talking about ARCO. I'm talking about this is
No, I agree. Yes, 100%.
This is the value. Why would you go up the stairway and open a door and it was exactly the same as where you left it, and you've got to go down and all down? You want to go somewhere else. The creative mind takes you to somewhere else.
Perfect. I really love this. When you were speaking about and you mentioned the gap with the elastic, which is a great analogy. I'll read more about it after. It reminded me of potentially one of the biggest failure in rebrand, which is when Gap, I think it's 2010 or 2029, when they changed their logo for a week.
Yeah.
And it just came out of, it was a rebrand, they went minimalist, they changed, but they just did it without preparing anyone, without linking people emotionally to the change. And the feedback was just horrible around it. And within 5 days, and God knows how much is spent to rebrand and then come back to the old brand in everything they would have worldwide, to the original brand, because they just simply confused people or they lost the connection they built for years. And potentially there was no real purpose or need to do that.
Well, there's a thing. There's some of the notes on here talking about people and how do you communicate. You know, it's all about people. It's all about. I mean, no one paid respect for the heritage of that. Where did they come from? What was the story? I mean, the Gap was a game changer. 20 years ago, and the marketing guy just came as, oh, we want to change something, or somebody who didn't really respect. And also they didn't understand what the customer felt, what was in the customer's mind. You can't just change something because you think it's good. You've got to go and do the diagnostics. You know, it's very, very important. And that's only the pathway to get an understanding that this is the right move. Then you've got to go to the right move. How do you activate and motivate and inspire? That's where creativity comes in. Yeah, and don't forget also, Mo, the customer is very, very opinionated. I mean, it's a cut and dry. If you don't get the right little pattern on top of your coffee cup, you don't like the pattern, well, I don't go to that coffee shop anymore. You have a bad service situation, or the worst thing is the phone is having to wait on the phone for music and saying, oh, you're valued to us. And you wait for 20 minutes, you're still valued. But I mean, we're getting a bit sick of that statement. Right?
Yes.
But these are all important brand touch points, way beyond just, it doesn't matter what the brand mark is. It's those relationships are so critical.
Of course. If the brand promised something and then when someone use it and they found that the promise is something and the reality is something else, like it's almost like you fooled me once with your brand, but I'm not coming back again. Now I want to move to.
Can I just say on that too, Mo? Just while you're there, I'm just thinking about us. The expert helping, you would have the same situation I have. The expert that's actually got over 10,000 hours of experience on these things, that actually worked all across and can help a company really be successful. But today it's really hard for the expert to get past the noise of he, she, whatever. But when you talk to the CEOs, as you and I have both talked to that one client we worked together on, you talk to those guys. They are into the big picture. They understand the mission. They understand the vision. Or if they don't understand, they really like people to help them understand it for them.
Of course. I mean, eventually the purpose of the brand to bring this vision, to make it flourish, to achieve the mission itself, and to connect with the right people on it. Now, we're going to make our last move and speak about a very typical topic. And this topic, potentially, lots of people speaking about it. It has... and I'm sure you'll have a lot of opinion on it. but we are going there, and it's more and more getting considered as part of the process, either from the strategy itself, from the communication, the research, and then the output, the visual, the tone of voice, etc., which is the role of AI and or artificial intelligence in branding itself. For this topic, I would like to invite Lohan from our team. She lead innovation department at Moworks, because I believe she also have few things to add and some of questions for you, Richard. Because I know by fact, and you and me, we spoke about this one before, in terms of the process of branding done by connecting with people, being with them in the room, understanding, as you said, hearing it from them firsthand, working with them, changing their mindset, take them this through the stairways, or now things can be done much faster, much lighter using different AI tools. So, Lohan, if you can join us, that would be amazing.
Hello,
On
guys.
time. Hi, Lohan.
On time, yes. Up here, it's very, very nice to have this conversation, human to human, still. Basically, my point in AI is just, for me, AI is still a child. It's learning a lot, but it's not. It won't replace humans. I mean, we know that there are plenty of things that AI can do right now. They're pretty amazing, but still far away. We have so many tools, like right now can generate image and people can use them, but I still think that AI cannot replace human, because AI cannot really create. It's just mimic how we act. It can help. It's definitely gonna help in so many process. We have Mid Journey, we have Stable Diffusion. They just to mention few, but it's gonna get better and better for sure. So that is my take on AI.
If I ask Richard, in terms of your
Okay,
opinion
first of all, I love AI. I don't have any issue with AI. I think AI reduces the or helps us understand the landscape, helps us with the context, helps us find the keyhole, because the more information you have, the better it is to actually determine where is the best place to tap. So like plumber's invoice, materials, $5, knowing where to tap $500. So, that's important. I think the other thing to say about AI, that most people, I think, and we're looking at this deeply from a branding point of view, how do you access AI? You don't just get more of the same context, because that's really what it is. If you type in the same word, one word you will type, you get the same response. How do you interpret AI to actually be able to help you better communicate with your customers, or your customers in terms of audiences? Okay, so there are some, obviously, when I said I'm not frightened of it, that wasn't meant to be what potentially could be a light-hearted comment. It's how do you work with it? How, as creative people, do we manage it and use it as a resource? And I think it's a fantastic resource. But the key is to untangle AI. I'm talking about ChatGPT here. Basically, that's what I'm interested in. How do you untangle that and actually find the key points that you need to then make it relevant, and you can then build a story off it? And unfortunately, what AI is going to do, it is going to make some aspects of things that we take for granted today as redundant, and but they create there'll be new things that come out of this, and we can't be frightened about this sort of technology, because it's part of our future.
Is it, if you don't mind me asking, have you integrated already AI as part of any of your current processes?
Well, for example, if I had to do say something, so let's say how can signage be more effective in a built environment, right? I could type that in, and I'll get within, by the time I finish the sentence, I'll get like 20 points about that. Now, that to me is an advantage, because there's the language there, I can put it together, but it doesn't actually say then how do you connect better with your customers, or what can you make a difference. That has to, you type in, and I've done this, you type in, what is imagination? It can't answer it. Okay, at this stage, of course it will potentially, but how the power of imagination, it says actually it's a human trait. So, you know, that's the thing I'm interested in. I mean, you aren't going to change the movement. You can't change these things that's coming in. How do you make it work for you? But how do you make it individual? And again, getting back to this, I've mentioned this word about 5 times now. This word is heard, that everything's the same. And this is actually what goes back to this LinkedIn message I saw. They're reading on Google, etc. They know that someone's just ripped off ChatGPT. They can tell that. The algorithm can tell you that. So how do you change the algorithm to make something with a human aspect? You've got to bring the mind into it. You've got to bring creativity into it. You've got to bring the imagination. How do you change the formulas so that you disrupt? So creativity is disrupting the status quo. If everyone uses ChatGPT, that's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a lot clearer. But is it actually going to make a point of difference? I don't think so. This is fascinating stuff for any person in this type of thing, and that's why I'm so fascinated. I mean, you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it, the strategies are all this. The strategies are just the way you lay the platform out. The strategies are getting everyone on board. How do you move and how do you make impact? It's imagination.
Amazing, Richard. Thank you for this. The time is clicking and we reaching the end of this conversation. We have few questions and we promise people that we will be trying to answer most of it if possible. So I will just pick some of the questions that we have here. I'll start with this one from Peter. He said, I've seen many businesses tarnish their brand by the way they engage with other businesses. To your point, B2C, B2B, a huge part is the way you engage and communicate with people. How important is a people strategy as part of the brand, Richard?
Fundamental. Absolutely fundamental. You know, I mean, to be engaged and to feel you are part of something that matters is what we all want in our life. So why is it any different in business? You know, talking to people but understanding that the particular business and where you're at has a particular tribal culture. It is unique. It's a seed. Okay, it's a seed. It's like the idea of the seed. The seed is there in the darkness of doubt and uncertainty. It grows through the darkness into the light through nurturing and understanding and connectivity. You can't connect with just abstract digital imagery that's just you can pull out. I mean, with great respect to Canva and places like that, all this stuff is just digital output. You've got to have something that specifically personalizes things so that people feel they matter. Today is full of, it's so hard to feel, you know, that you have a self-worth and that the people are talking to you with authenticity, word, language, you know, image, you know, just tone of voice. It's also critical nowadays because people are wanting that. You know, the digital world is making everything the same. So what Peter's saying is I'm 100%, that's what I mean. It's not much different from B2B to B2C. It's just about people.
Perfect. I have a very interesting, simple question from Tom, which is speak, and it's potentially it brings us back to one of the trends that we spoke about that was here last year and the gap and how to be out of the herd. Richard, he's simply asking, is the simplistic approach because of the new tech platforms such as Canva, which allow non-designers to produce assets, which is basically making it wider for people who can come, contribute, and build brand?
Yeah, well, I celebrate Canva. Canva has made the average person who doesn't have much knowledge about design used to think they used to think creativity and design was the sort of the you know you had to go to church, you know, like I mean you had to go to be a designer, you had to be good at drawing. Well, now Canva's made creativity and expression available. IKEA did the same thing with furniture. It made it absolutely available at a good quality at that level. But we all know what Canva. We can tell what Canva designs are. We're not saying that's wrong. We're just saying if you want something more incisive, more intelligent, more bespoke, more special that you couldn't get anywhere else, you need to have an imaginative mind on it, not just a collective. You know, with great respect to, I mean, that's the most amazing thing that's ever happened in terms of creativity, to make computer technology more accessible, to have people who can express themselves with ease, can do it at home, can do the whole thing through Canva, unbelievably fantastic, because it just makes the whole subject matter more available to everyone. Okay, it's not exclusive, but the job then now on top of that is for creative business people like myself or ourselves in terms of the sector to work above that and say, that's brilliant, celebrate it, let's go to another higher point. You know, that's life.
Perfect. Another question from Jeff. He's asking about what attributes should a B2B firm or a B2B business look when they're hiring a brand manager or a VP of a brand that will be reporting to a CMO? And is this the better process that brand manager or brand VP report to the CMO, or is it the opposite?
Cool. I don't really know how to answer that. Look, I suppose the important thing is, if that's talking, I would say that's almost like a personal brand scenario coming into a business brand. I'd say, what can you contribute to something to the vision of the business that's greater than yourself? Okay, what is it that you can contribute? Now, whether it's the CMO or the marketing, the VP, they're all there for one specific purpose: to grow and build that brand, not just in products and services, etc., but culture, the more meaningful aspect of why a business exists. Now, that to me, and to not be, and to always look at that rather than any personal agendas that one might have in terms of how they want to work or who they want to work with. That'd be, I mean, everything has to be subordinate to where the business wants to go.
Yes. If I would think of an answer to this one as well, potentially VP of brand or brand manager, the attribution they should be, they are able to support this long-term vision, because majority of the brand itself, it's all about building and supporting this reputation or people perception about the business itself. So being able to listen to people, how they preserve the brand itself, and have some form of attributes to, if they can do some form of translation to those feedback or the reputation of the brand in the market in a way that they report it back to the CMO, so the CMO can take some action to start either changing the perception or start emphasizing a specific thing that people found and build on it. So being able to read the market, understand where the current brand is positioned, where it should be, I believe it's key skills this person should be having.
Also, can I say on that? Could I say on that?
Yes.
You know, a lot of the issues that we deal with is that the campaign is confused with the brand. The campaign is a market positioning at a certain point in time. It has a beginning, middle, and end. The brand lives on forever, and we need to spend more time in businesses working on the brand and how the brand is expressed through campaigns, etc. But the end slide, or the end of the contact, or the end of the phone conversation, or the end of the experience, in whatever, has to come back to the master brand. And you know, a lot of people in marketing positions, etc., confuse campaigns with the brand. And we all know when marketing people and VPs and everything come in and out, everything changes. They're all going to change this, a new packaging range or whatever. But at the end of the day, it is the brand, the value in the brand, the cultural value, the economic value, the social value, the imaginative value, and the economic value are all about the power of that brand and the reputation, the value of that brand as a business.
Yes.
Campaigns
100%.
Campaigns come and go.
100%. There is a podcast I heard last week, and they were speaking about when you think of a brand of a marketing budget, this can add to the answer to Jeff. So the marketing budget should somehow always consider potentially 70 or 80% for marketing activities, things that can be tangible, you can actually measure and report on, and then 30 to 20% for the brand itself, which is here become the positioning, the awareness, the longevity of the brand itself, which is harder to measure just yet. But you need to continue investing in developing your brand positioning in the market, etc. So I felt when I heard it did make sense. You cannot just continue putting 100% of your effort on marketing only and see either demand or lead gen and just to see a result without investing in the future of the business, the future of the brand to ensure it continue lasting. So when you turn off your campaign, as you said, they come and go. Your brand should carry the weight of the business itself and continue to drive commerce basic to it without having always to have a campaign itself around it. So perfect. Thank you, Richard, for this one. I will go to one last question, which is, I believe it's something, Richard, you have lots of experience on it. I know in the last month you were in, I believe, Hong Kong, delivering some speeches over there. We also work with different companies to help them go overseas. It's a question from She. She said, thank you for the amazing insight. I have a question for B2B businesses. How do you gain a brand awareness in a new market, especially in another country? When I speak with customers, the first barrier I run across is my company's brand are in a new country, and it's not in the same country they are in. So in a different way to say the question, how to take a brand and launch it in a different country or a new
That's an
market?
amazing question. I love that question because it takes us outside of this country. And when you're talking about other countries, you start talking about scale. When you talk about scale, you don't talk about scale in Australia. You know, it's not, we're too myopic. You've got to go outside Australia to see scale. So I suppose what I'd be saying there, that's where you really do have to look at your brand and have your website and the portals in which you can touch base with customers 24/7, have the messages that you want that your brand to be expressed in the market. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to go into a different market. I have experienced that myself, where our company has. And to talk with customers, you say first you're in another country, but I also think that might be actually changing because we're now beyond time. Our only limitation is time zone, because we don't have to go to places anymore physically. We can do that on Zoom, etc. So I respect what you say. I don't really have a direct answer for that because there's no secret bullet. I would just be saying, silver bullet. I would be saying you must recognize, as I try and do on at Arco's site, we have our site half in Chinese. That's because I'm interested in China. So, you know, to respect them and to say we can talk your language, we can understand you as much as we can. And we've just done a job at the moment, which is being done in China in a studio. When they sent the work down to us, and we don't speak English, we don't speak Chinese, and they don't speak English, and I have a translator. Our office is in Shichuazan, Melbourne, and the translator is in Beijing. The translator in Beijing, who's a designer, translates for us between the two. When we got the work from that Chinese studio into Arco's office here, you couldn't tell the difference between what we do here and what they did up there. And they're 2-hour time difference behind and 12 hours flying time. So I think it's really about being humble and being respectful and making it easier for them to understand you rather than you understanding them. I hope I don't really know much more than my own personal experience.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think it's a great answer. I will add to it, if you don't mind. So potentially, if you want to take your brand to a new market, obviously my first advice is you really need to know good that market, which is an exercise that you have to do it anyway if you want to enter market here or overseas. So, but the difference is you want to understand the different provider of similar solution in that space, how they are positioned, how people see them. Some product services that we have here in Australia can be seen or treated in a different way in different countries. So you understand what's people's perception around this particular product or service, how much learning you also potentially you will have to invest in that specific country. Some of the stuff here we take it as a given. You know, if you are a real estate agent, you don't need to educate people what does a real estate agent they do in an agency. But in other countries, the concept of having a real estate agent, sometimes it doesn't exist, or only 1 to 5% of people actually use it. So as part of the brand, as part of you entering there, you will have to have some form of education, um, potentially as part of your branding pillars, because you need to educate people about this new service. It could be the opposite. It could be known over there, not known here, so you don't need to educate anymore, and you start want to work on your key advantages against the local competitors. So lots of it is localization, understanding um, the market and their needs, plus really trying to research really well the competitors in that specific target, so you can see how you will position yourself with them. I hope this answer your questions. We have more questions, but unfortunately we don't have more time, so I will make sure to come back to you guys in the chat and answer some of these questions. Richard, as well, please, um, if you like, you can go and comment on some of the questions in the comment section of this event. This is a wrap. Richard, thank you again for your time. Thanks for the great insight, and thank you for actually making it happen within the time frame. I love that. I look forward to our next collaboration. For the audience, thank you for joining us, for your questions, and bearing with us for this 1 hour middle of your day. Stay tuned for our next event. We'll be having the next installment of Making Moves launch soon. Plus, we are having an event on the 17th of August, which is the in-person event on the O'Brien Ice House in Docklands, where we're going to be discussing profitability and sustainability. So stay tuned and keep an eye on our communication. And as always, keep making moves, taking bold steps toward your business growth. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, everyone.